In the most recent installments of Hunter x Hunter, Hisoka finally reappeared in chapter 392. The only issue being that this may not be Hisoka. And there are what I can only describe as a painfully convincing series of facts that point to this figure being a member of the Phantom Troupe in disguise, conning Henry out of a pass to get to tier 1 of the Black Whale to pull off their greatest heist against the Karkin Empire. Out of context, it sounds a bit weird. It's one of those things that I didn't take very seriously until I started to look very carefully at it. But it starts with the fact that killing Hisoka isn't the only goal that Chrollo has on the Black Whale 1. In fact, even if Hisoka hadn't declared war on the troupe, Chrollo already had plans to board the vessel. Pretty much immediately after leaving Heaven's Arena, Chrollo was on the phone to Shalnak explaining the plan to rob the Karkin royal family, who possess wealth on levels that not even the troupe could ever come close to accessing. This is their big score. If they're able to successfully plunder the Karkin royalty, then Chrollo could probably fund his own nation if he wanted to. Which is to say that this thieving mission aboard the Black Whale 1 is not a side quest. In reality, finding and killing Hisoka is the side quest. Because that's what happens when you engage with Hisoka. You play stupid games and win stupid prizes. But speaking of stupid games, this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Oh, they're not gonna like that. The game you know about because of people like me who accept monetary compensation to showcase it. So I've been doing Raid sponsorships for a long time now, and I'm gonna let you in on a shocking secret. I do them because the game's actually pretty damn good. Raid gets labeled as pay to win, but there's such an incredibly rich ecosystem of free-to-play endgame users. It also gets labeled as a time grinder, when in reality it has systems built into it to save you time like the auto battle feature. But this is the criticism that annoys me the most. It is always said that Raid is so shallow it has no depth, which isn't true from any perspective. This game is 6 years old now, and it has developed a frankly disgustingly deep well of content, and my personal favorite aspect, a ton of lore, with more than 700 champions, each with their own unique motivations and backstories. You can also win a game console, smartphone, Amazon gift cards, legendaries, and other in-game loot. After downloading Raid using my link or QR code, just go to summertavern.plarium.com, enter your Raid ID, and start searching for hidden items to prepare a refreshing potion for a champion. And you can also get a 2-month YouTube Premium subscription by downloading Raid before July 17th, playing for at least 5 days, and hitting level 20 within 3 days. And you could get bonuses available only through my link, such as a huge starter pack featuring epic champion Tyrell. Plus, after reaching level 25, you'll get another starter pack featuring epic Rector Darth. And you can even come find me under the name NewWorldReview and join my clan. So absolutely give it a go. But for now, let's get back to finding Hisoka, which is also viewed as the easier mission, which is why the troupe are aiming to complete it first, then regroup and deal with their big heist. And this focus becomes very clear when we catch up with the troupe on tier 5 of the Black Whale. They get interrupted by these rude members of the Char family, and the first matter that Chrollo discusses is his quote top priority being Hisoka. But this is actually quite a clever tactic from Chrollo. Something to keep in mind is that each of these 3 Mafia families on the lower levels are connected to one of the Karkin princes. In this case, the Char family are directly funded by 7th Prince Luzerus, so they have a vested interest in making sure that this sneaky troupe don't cause the princes any trouble. All except for Morena and the Hale Lee family on tier 3, that is, because she has already betrayed her prince and wants as much chaos as possible. But the Phantom Troupe could barely leave port without being immediately detected. They all go to board the Black Whale 1 stealthily enough, but the troupe are so famous that they can't avoid being recognized by members of the underworld. So what Chrollo is doing here is diffusing the situation. He claims that finding Hisoka is their top priority, as if the troupe are just here to take care of a little internal business and they're not here to cause any further trouble. And this works to a degree, because the Chara representative then tells Chrollo exactly what he needs to get to tiers 3 and 4. So not only did Chrollo hide his intentions and prevent an immediate conflict, but he also acquired information for the greater purpose of the heist. Although Chrollo does sneakily overplay his hand when he directly asks how they can get to tier 1, which is the top level where all of the princes and their various riches reside. To which the Mafia representative says not to push his luck, which does put the Mafia on edge. But this was an important step, because as Finks says, the reaction of the representative confirms that there is a big score waiting for them on tier 1. So thinking about it from the troupe's perspective, they have exited this encounter in a net positive position, because the Mafia already suspected that the troupe were here to target the princes, so no damage was ultimately done. They still have the same impression, but they successfully extracted information at 0 cost. It was a masterclass in communication and deception, and that's not even the best bit. it. The most brilliant part of this maneuver is that it put all three Mafia families on high alert for Hisoka, who prior to this was a complete unknown and free to move about the ship as he pleases. But as a result of this, he is now the target of every underworld agent who wants to use him for their own purpose. Because these Mafia factions are not stupid. They want to use both Hisoka and the Phantom Troupe to pursue their own personal agendas. And you see that most masterfully executed by both the Jiyu and Cha-R underbosses Henry Bikondofno and Kenny Wang, the latter of whom manages to employ Feitan Finks and Nobunaga to assassinate Morena, whilst Henry successfully finds and makes a deal with Hisoka. But are the Phantom Troupe, or more specifically, is Chrollo that easy to outwit? Because what happens in this scene with Henry and Hisoka is straight out of a James Bond film, where all of the details of the evil plan are revealed so that Bond knows exactly what's going to happen and can come up with a plan to stop it. Henry explains that the Jiyu family have teamed up with Cha-R against the Hail-E, as well as how they want to use the Phantom Troupe to achieve their goals, and to top it all off, Henry offers Hisoka a room on Tier 1 so that he can relax while they use the troupe. Now imagine for a moment that this wasn't Hisoka that Henry was speaking to. What if this was a member of the Phantom Troupe in disguise? In that case, Henry would have just given the troupe everything they need to accomplish their primary mission. And something else I should note is that this meeting takes place in a cinema, and the film that's screening is John Carpenter's The Thing. A very curious choice considering it came out in 1982, but thematically appropriate, because the titular thing has the ability to perfectly imitate other life forms. So that's interesting. And now we should ask, is there anyone in the Phantom Troupe who has the ability to transform into others? To which the answer is yes, in fact, very yes. And both of them are conveniently part of the same Hisoka hit squad that we haven't caught up with since the troupe began their mission. Shizuku and Bonolenov both elected to form a team with Chrollo because neither of them had abilities suited to fighting Hisoka, and they have a rather fascinating conversation where Shizuku says that she plans to search for Hisoka in disguise, which Bonolenov wants to do as well, but he also chooses this moment to reveal a previously unknown Nen ability called Metamorphosin. He keeps the details very vague, but Bonolenov states that he can take on many forms depending on some unknown restriction, and while it is a very useful ability, Bonolenov admits that he's not smart enough to put it to use effectively. And in response to this, Chrollo says, "Alright, there's something that I want you to do." So regardless of whether this overall theory is true or not, we do have confirmed shape-shifting shenaniganry in progress from the Phantom Troupe. So I would propose that the Hisoka that Henry is speaking to in the cinema could be Bonolenov in disguise, which is hinted at by the fact that it's the premise of the film that's playing in front of them. He was sent there by Chrollo, who predicted this would happen. In fact, Chrollo didn't predict it, he enacted it. Remember that it was Chrollo who put such a huge emphasis on Hisoka being the troupe's top target. Chrollo was the one who raised the alarm and made it so that all eyes would be hunting for a horny battle clown. And then if Bonolenov goes on to become Hisoka, then naturally he's gonna get approached. He doesn't even have to do anything, they're gonna find him. Now there is a question surrounding why Chrollo would do this, as it could actively be placing Bonolenov in danger. After all, the easiest way to stop chaos aboard the ship would be to eliminate Hisoka in order to placate the Phantom Troupe. That's what conventional logic would dictate, but that's not at all the case. Before I said that Chrollo overplayed his hand by asking how to get to Tier 1, but this was also intentional. He wanted to present the Phantom Troupe as a threat to the princes, and therefore as a future enemy of the Mafia factions. And considering that the enemy of my enemy, and in this case is a clown, then it would only make sense that the Mafia factions would go on to make a deal with Hisoka, rather than make him their enemy as well. So Chrollo gives Bonolenov the task of loitering around on Tier 3, which we know the troupe already have access to, because that's where Illumi and Carlito were found by the Zodiacs. And he tells Bonolenov to wait, plan that even he is clever enough to execute. And would you look at that, eventually a Mafia representative finds him and offers him a free pass to Tier 1. How very convenient. Now there is one issue with this idea, and that is the existence of Lynch Fulboko, because after encountering this Hisoka-shaped man, Lynch stated that, quote, "that was definitely Hisoka." Now why should we take her word for that? Well, that would be because Lynch has a unique talent for finding the truth. Her Nen ability is called Body and Soul, which is essentially a truth punch. She can ask a target a question, then punch them, and the punchee is forced to give an honest answer, which ends up being quite funny because she just uses it to punch every man she can find, until eventually she does encounter Hisoka by process of elimination, and Lynch asks, "Are you Hisoka?" then punches him. However, before Hisoka can answer, Lynch falls unconscious. And it's implied that Hisoka delivered a very swift reflex punch connecting with Lynch before or during her strike on him, and so it's uncertain whether or not Lynch was conscious to hear the answer to her question, which I should say the answer is involuntarily delivered via telepathy. So just because we don't see Hisoka answer doesn't mean that Lynch didn't hear it. But she also never states that she heard the answer. From the way I read it, she and Zakuro just assume it was Hisoka Hisoka because of his overwhelming aura. And just as a side note, in the space of 2 chapters, 3 different people ask Hisoka if he is Hisoka, and on each occasion, he does not answer. Which is a bit odd no matter how it turns out. If this is Hisoka, then why not just give a casual yeah bruh? And if this is Bonolenov, then why not at least give a nod so as, to not draw suspicion to yourself? Are you Hisoka? Silence. Are you not Hisoka? But as mentioned, there is another candidate for which this behavior would make perfect sense. The second shapeshifter within the troupe is Chrollo himself, although this one is slightly more convoluted. During his fight in Heaven's Arena, Chrollo revealed the Convert Hands Hatsu, whereby touching a target with his right hand causes the target to take on Chrollo's likeness, and touching a target with his left hand transforms Chrollo into the target's likeness. So at first this idea doesn't work at all, because to become Hisoka, Chrollo would need to find Hisoka in the first place to make it happen. But then you remember Bonolenov and it all falls into place. If Bonolenov can transform into Hisoka via metamorphosis, then Chrollo could then use Convert Hands to take on Bonolenov's likeness, which is now Hisoka, and that would be what Chrollo was referring to when he said that there was something he wanted Bonolenov to do. It's complicated, but that's Chrollo. Remember during Heaven's Arena, he had to stack like a gazillion different Nen abilities and keep swapping them in and out to beat Hisoka. So compared to that, this is quite simple. And some evidence to say that this may be Chrollo comes in the form of Hisoka's question to Henry. He asks, "Who do you think will win, me or the troupe?" Which isn't exactly out of character for Hisoka to ask, but it's perfectly in character with what Chrollo would do. It very much reminds me of York New City, where after the fight stopped, Chrollo asked Zeno Zoldyck, one-on-one, who would win, you or me? Chrollo seems to greatly value the opinion of skilled Nen users when he can safely attain it, and Henry is definitely a skilled user. I mean, he's no Zeno Zoldyck, but Henry is still pretty amazing considering that he fights with pigeons. And something else I want to discuss is eye contact. This was brought to my attention in a Reddit thread by Dark Soul Simp, which also goes over a lot of what I've covered, but they noticed something that I didn't, which was that this Hisoka is very averse to making eye contact. He often speaks looking away or even down from his conversation partner, staring off into some sort of dark void, which is a very classic Chrollo trait. Hisoka is usually much more of an intense person that craves eye contact, someone that you just know is mentally undressing and then battling you. Now, the easy way to know whether or not this is Chrollo would be to see Hisoka's palms, which would be marked with the Convert Hands Hatsu, but he has yet to reveal them to us. In fact, his outfit seems almost deliberately designed to hide them, as he seems to favor strolling around with his hands in his pockets, which is also not typical Hisoka behavior. He's usually a lot more flamboyant, even when performing the most minor of tasks like walking and breathing. But I want to go back to why Hisoka never answered these 3 questions. There is a strong but unconfirmed suspicion that one of the many restrictions for Chrollo using his double-face bookmark ability is that he is unable to lie when the ability is active, which, to be clear, using the bookmark is the only way this transformation could be achieved, because otherwise Chrollo would need to keep his book open at all times and it would be very obvious that it's not Hisoka. The cost for the bookmark is stated by Chrollo as having to make some, quote, new adjustments and more annoying conditions to deal with, and he goes on to tell Hisoka the truth the whole time during the Heaven's Arena fight. Chrollo is being unusually open about the specifics of his abilities whenever Hisoka asked, which is very counterintuitive for a Nen user, given that Nen combat is all about information. However, it's a very good and powerful restriction to add to someone wanting to use 2 Nen abilities at once from his book, and that could explain why this Hisoka never answered the most basic question of whether or not he is Hisoka, because whilst using Convert Hands, Chrollo cannot lie. And if this is the case, then Henry just gave the leader of the Phantom Troupe a clear path to Tier 1 to complete the Kakian Empire heist, which all went just according to Chrollo's plan.